Hello guys, welcome to the video. Today I'm going to start the last part of the chapter plant kingdom, that is plant life cycle and alternation of generation. Okay, so starting with the topic, in plants both haploid and diploid cells can divide by mitosis. Okay, both haploid and diploid can divide by mitosis. Mitosis is what? Mitosis is equational division. That means there is no reduction of number of chromosomes. Okay, this ability leads to the formation of different plant bodies, that is haploid and diploid plant bodies. Haploid plant body produces gametes by mitosis. This plant body represents a gametophyte. Okay, that means gametophytic stage of a plant body is always haploid. Okay, and it produces gametes by mitosis only, not by meiosis. Okay, mitosis is equational division. Then, following fertilization, zygote also divides by mitosis to produce diploid sporophytic plant bodies. Okay, when fertilization occurs, two haploid gametes combine to form a diploid zygote, and then zygote also divides by mitosis to produce diploid sporophytic plant bodies. Okay, then haploid spores are produced by this plant body by meiosis. Okay, in sporophyte, okay, meiosis occurs to produce haploid spores because the sporophyte is diploid in nature and the spores are haploid in nature, so it should happen by meiosis. Okay, this in turn divide by mitosis to form a haploid plant body once again these spores divide by mitosis to produce a haploid plant body once again. Thus, during the life cycle of any sexually reproducing plants, there is alternation of generation between gamete producing haploid gametophyte and spore producing diploid sporophyte. That means always gametophyte. Gametophytic phase is haploid and sporophytic phase is diploid. Okay, and so are the gametes and spores. Then, however, different plant groups as well as individual representing them differ in the following patterns. Okay, so there are three types of life cycles in plant. The first is haplontic, then it comes to diplontic, and then haplodiplonic. Okay, haplontic and diplontic are at the two extreme ends, but haplodiplonic is in the middle. Okay, so we are going to study first topic, that is haplontic kind of life cycle. Sporophytic generation is represented by only one celled zygote. That means it is diploid. Zygote is always diploid and it is represented by zygote. Which is represented by zygote? The sporophytic generation. Then there are no free living sporophytes. Meiosis in the zygote results in the formation of haploid spores. Okay, meiosis in the zygote represents the it's from the haploid spores. The haploid spores divide mitotically to form the gametophyte. The dominant photosynthetic phase in such plant is free living gametophyte. Okay, gametophyte is free living and is very much dominant in haplontic kind of plants. Okay, then this kind of life cycle is termed as haplontic. Many algae such as volvox, Spirogera and some species of Chlamydomonas represent this pattern. Okay, so here you can see the diagram of haplontic life cycle. See, the pink represents the gametophytic phase. Okay, that the pink which represents the gametophytic is in it acquires the much of the space in the circle, whereas the sporophytic, okay, the sporophytic generation or the sporophytic phase has very much less area in it. That means like diagrammatically only they are saying us gametophyte is more dominant than sporophyte. Okay, then zygote by meiosis forms spores, and then spores develops into gametophyte, and then again to gametogenesis. Okay, there they are haploid gametes, and then by syngamy again they produce zygote. This is the life cycle in haplontic kind of haplontic pathway. Then coming to the second life cycle, that is diplontic. On other extreme, okay, these are at the extremes. Haplontic and diplontic are at the extremes. Then haplodiplonic is in between of them. Then on the other extreme, This type wherein the diploid sporophyte is dominant. There gametophyte was dominant. Here sporophyte is dominant. Okay. The diploid sporophyte is dominant. Photosynthesis, photosynthetic, independent phase of plant. The gametophytic phase is represented by single or few celled haploid gametophyte. Okay, here the sporophyte is photosynthetic, it is dominant, and it is independent. Okay, it is not dependent on gametophyte. Okay, and gametophytic phase is just represented by a single or few celled gametophyte. Okay, then this kind of life cycle is termed as diplontic. And algae such as fucus species represent this pattern. Okay, an algal member that is the fucus species represent this kind of pattern. Which pattern? It is diplontic. In addition, all seed bearing plants, that is gymnosperms and angiosperm, follow this pattern, where some variations wherein the gametophyte phase is few to multi-celled. Okay, this is shown by some algal members like the species of fucus and by gymnosperms and angiosperms. Okay, diagrammatic representation is over here. See the sporophytic the sporophytic phase of the plant, it covers the most of the circle. That means it is more dominant than gametophytic phase. As you can see in the flowering plants near you, like what all the plant greeny leaves and stems and branch you are seeing, those are sporophytic phase, which is 2 in number. Okay, and the anther and the ovule which you see in only flowers, those are gametophytic phase, which are haploid. That means n number of chromosomes are present. Then sporophyte by meiosis produce gametes. Okay, and then leads to by meiosis produce gametophyte, and then gametogenesis, and then syngamy, and then zygote formation, and then zygote it again uh, converts into sporophyte. Then next, coming to the last life cycle, that is haplodiplonic. Bryophytes and pterodophytes interestingly exhibit an intermediate condition, that is haplodiplonic. Both phases are multicellular, however, they differ in their dominant phase. That means both the stages, that is the gametophytic and the sporophytic stages, are multicellular, but in bryophytes gametophyte is dominant, and in pterodophytes sporophyte is dominant. The same thing they are going to explain in the next two paragraphs. A dominant, independent, photosynthetic, thyroid erect phase is represented by haploid gametophyte, and it alternates with the short-lived multicellular sporophyte, totally or partially dependent on gametophyte for its anchorage and nutrition. All bryophytes represent this pattern. That means how like in bryophytes the very dominant part of life is gametophytic part. Okay, how the gametophyte is there? It is dominant. Okay, it's dominant, it is independent, it is photosynthetic, it is having thyroid structure, it is erect. Okay, and it is haploid. Remember, always gametophytic phase are haploid and sporophytic phase are diploid. Okay, and it alternates with the short lived. How the sporophyte is? It is very short lived, and it is multicellular, and it is partially or totally dependent on gametophytic phase. This occurs in what? It occurs in bryophytes, but in pterodophytes it is the totally opposite case. Here the very dominant phase is sporophyte, and gametophyte, it is dependent. No, it is independent only, but it is short lived. Okay, next. Okay, reading about pterodophytes, the diploid sporophyte represented by a dominant, independent, photosynthetic, no vascular plant. Okay, so for pterodophytes are the first land occupying vascular plants. You should remember this point. Okay, then coming to pterodophytes, what they have said, they are dominant, they are independent, they are photosynthetic, and also vascular plants. It alternates with multicellular sporophytic or saprophytic or atrophic independent but short-lived haploid gametophyte. How the gametophyte is? Either it is saprophytic or it is atrophic, and it is independent. It is not dependent, it is independent, but it is short-lived. That means its lifespan is very short. Short-lived haploid gametophyte. Again, it is haploid gametophyte. You need to remember this. You can't confuse. Like gametophyte is haploid or diploid. Gametophyte is always haploid. Sporophyte is always diploid. Okay. Then, such a pattern is known as haplodiplonic life cycle. All pteridophytes exhibit this pattern. All bryophytes also exhibit that pattern, which has gametophyte is dominant and sporophyte is short-lived and it is dependent. But in pteridophytes, sporophyte is both are independent, but sporophyte is long living and gametophyte is short lived. Then, interestingly, while most algal members or the algal genera are haplontic, some of them, such as ectocarps, Polysiphonia, kelps, are haplodiplonic. Some exceptions are there in algal members also. Those exceptions are ectocarps, Polysiphonia, and kelps. These three members show haplodiplonic kind of life cycle, and fucus, an algal member, shows diplontic kind of life cycle. Okay, this ends the topic. If you have liked my explanation, please like, share, comment and subscribe. Okay, and if you have some doubts, you can comment down and I'll surely answer them. uh, Thank you.